Hey, everybody, we've got another interview with a former Cyclone here. John Quinn played for Iowa State from 77 to 81. He was on Earl Bruce's teams and also with Donnie Duncan, but was also the sideline reporter. He followed Brian Neal, and he was prior to Ben Bruns, I believe. So it's kind of the theme we've got going here, trying to track down some of these old contacts with the radio broadcast and former players. So hope you enjoy it. He was a former police officer, chief of police in Waukee. We could do another whole podcast on some of the stories he's got from his law enforcement days, but hope you enjoy it. Hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving. All right. Well, we've kind of got a theme going here. Brian Neal was on last week, and he was the official first sideline reporter for Iowa State, and I guess you're the official second one. Am I right or wrong?
No, you are correct. You are correct.
So who talked you into doing that?
Brian did. He gave me a call, said I'm giving it up, and he says you might be getting a call from Pete Taylor. And then Pete called me out shortly thereafter, and he goes, "Hey, you want to do Saturday's game on the sideline?" I kind of asked what it would entail, but I had to get permission from headquarters for where I was working, let them know that I was going to be out of state for the weekend and not be able to be on call. And so they said, "Yeah, go for it. Have fun." And so we flew out to Wyoming. And
wow.
I didn't know anything about radio, didn't understand it, didn't want to, but Pete Taylor, if you know Pete, he had a real colorful vocabulary off air. I mean, and it was amazing. And so all I can think about, and he played a joke on me the first game out there in Wyoming. So it's pretty funny.
What did he do?
Well, we go ahead and we didn't even talk. All we did was talk about, life and friends and, what's going on the flight out. And never once talked about radio. So even before the game, we had lunch, everything, get up there. And Pete goes, "Here's your mic." And he says, "Just don't say the F word on the radio. You're good." And so I'm like, "Great." He goes, "We'll come down to you several times, but it's no big deal." So we get down there and we score 3 points. Next thing, they score 7. Scores 7-3, 14-3, 21-3. And then Pete goes, "Let's go down to John Quinn." And so they do. And Pete's like, "We got to be the worst team in America, blah, blah, blah." And he goes off and it was a tirade of colorful language. And I'm thinking, I'm about to be fired from my job back home. I can't believe he's doing this to me. And he goes, "What do you think, John?" And I didn't even answer. I pretended like I had no communication with him. He looks at me and he goes, "We're on intercom. Nobody can hear us." I was pissed. I started laughing. So I sent a colorful tirade back to him. It was my first experience on the radio, but Pete was a great guy.
What year would that have been?
Oh God, I don't know. I did it probably for 15 years or so.
Yeah. Most people that'll listen to the podcast will recognize your voice for sure. I mean, because that's Pete Taylor's obviously is an iconic voice that we remember anytime you hear a call. But I think those of us that listen to a lot of football games on the radio will recognize your voice as well. I mean, Brian wasn't on very long, but I knew you were on quite a while.
Yeah.
But I remember you as a quarterback. I mean, that's when you were at Iowa State from 77 and 81, if I remember right. And
yep.
And that was when I was in junior high and heading into high school. And so I was a huge Iowa State fan. I even knew who Brian Neal was because I was an offensive lineman. So you're in the Crutchfield days and
yep.
You're in the transition from Earl Bruce to Donnie Duncan, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and you also had another famous coach that was on the staff. I'm pretty sure Pete Carroll was on your staff, wasn't he?
Well, Pete Carroll and Mac Brown.
Yeah.
So both of them were
position there. One was what did Mac Brown coach?
Well, he was a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator.
So he was your coach.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. Good friend, great guy. I'll tell you what, I learned so much from him, not only about football, but about life itself, and the priorities that you have to place on things.
So he was he an assistant under Donnie Duncan as well?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because I've kind of kept track. I know Jimmy Johnson was on the staff, I think, under Johnny Majors, if I remember right.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
And then Pete Carroll, and it's crazy the how the football coaching tree branches out so far that there's some big time names that have actually walked through Jack Trice Stadium before and been on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete Carroll was there for like 18 months or so. It was the year that I was redshirted, so I spent a lot of time with him. We had a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, that guy is the Energizer Bunny. And the way you see him on TV, he's just like that in person. Really a good guy.
So he had, what was he, in his 20s?
Yeah, he was. I think he was still in diapers, kind of like. I'll tell you, he's been around in football for a lot of years. A lot of great knowledge, a lot of great experience. USC, of course, now Seattle. So, but a good guy, really good guy.
Yeah, so I heard him speak out last year about artificial turf. I mean, did you hear that? I think he was one of the guys. The NFL they're starting to get some pushback on all of the artificial turf in the stadiums because of all the ACL injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was one of them. It was just ironic because my son was a senior last year in Humboldt here, and we had a kid blow his ACL the last regular season game of the year on a field turf field in our area. And then about that same time, we started hearing rumblings that Pete was kind of speaking out against artificial turf in the NFL as well.
Yeah, a lot of coaches don't like it. If you don't have the right shoes, a giving type of shoe that'll slide a little bit, when you get hit, if it locks into that turf, the only thing that's going to go is your knee or the joint that, got hit. And I've seen a lot of people have injuries. In fact, my knee went out when I was throwing a ball. Guy just aimed at it and hit it, and it took me out for the season. But it's great stuff. I mean, weather resistant, but I'll tell you what, it's devastating, and it can be, even with all the advancements in technology on the field turf. But when you get into that artificial stuff, it can be impactful.
And your turf back in the day in Iowa State Stadium was not what it is today, if I remember right.
Oh man, it was a slab of cement, and then they threw some, this artificial green stuff on top of it, and a lot of separated shoulders, a lot of knee injuries, things like that.
Well, I mean, but Jack Trice, it wasn't Jack Trice called back then, but I mean, when they moved from the field downtown to that stadium, I mean, that had to kind of be a state-of-the-art move. I mean, because it was a pretty modern play. Still, I mean, it looks fantastic now with the bold-in end zone and everything, but back in the day, when did it open? Like shortly before you were there, if I remember right. Was it?
Yeah, I think it opened 76.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Because Hilton opened in 73, I believe. And yeah, so that whole complex was built about that time. So
right, exactly. Yeah. It was great. I'll tell you what, when you're a high school kid and you're coming into a facility like that, and it was one of the larger stadiums inside the Big 8 when I was playing, and also now in the Big 12.
So have you been to the stadium recently?
To the Iowa State Stadium?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I go up every year. I've been up to several games and everything. Yeah.
It is an amazing transformation it's made. I mean, the bridge and the bold-in end zone. I mean, it's hardly recognizable when you see the old highlights of even Troy Davis.
I'll tell you what, the biggest addition is the Bergstrom building, the athletic building, and the facilities there for the student athletes, just to enhance their academic career along with their athletic one.
So tell me tell me the comparison. I know there is no comparison really, but from when you were at Iowa State to what the athletes have today, and NIL aside, I mean, nutrition, the weight room, Bruce Reimers has told me stories about, him and Carl Nelson have to split a pizza on a Sunday night. I mean, just what's your thoughts on how, what they have today versus what you had back then?
Well, there's just no comparison. It was just it's kind of like a different lifestyle almost, from a student athlete's perspective. And, two things have changed football, at least, college athletics. First is the portal and how easy it is to transfer from one school to the next. Then the other thing is the NIL. It's kind of like, to be honest with you, it's like the toothpaste got out of the tube and there is no way they're going to put it back. And so what you see is what you get. And it's still the wild, wild west. I mean, there's a huge lawsuit that's pending against the NCAA regarding NIL. It's going to affect like 14,000 athletes. And if NCAA loses it, it's going to be another dynamic that will change football forever, and also college athletics.
So I try to follow this fairly close. This is the first I've heard of it. I mean,
Yeah.
what can you explain a little bit what you're referring to?
Yeah, it's about the prohibited practices by the NCAA and the athletes that were impacted, and right before, I believe the NIL, and it's got an interesting dynamic associated with what path it's going through. I don't know where it's at in the courts. I just heard about it, read about it, and so it'll be interesting to see how it progresses through the justice system.
So they're saying they can't restrict the time that the athletes can spend with their coaches. Is that what you're saying? Or
No, it's more or less the finances associated with it, and the prohibited practice that the NCAA has stopped other athletes from getting money during a certain time segment.
Oh, okay.
So it's all about money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's mind-boggling. I mean, I've got a friend that teaches at Roosevelt High School, and him and I've had many discussions about it. And I said, it's just a matter of time before it hits the CIML, and you're dealing with that. And he goes, he says, buddy, it's already here. I mean, it's too bad. I mean, because back when you were playing, I mean, how many kids transferred from one school to the next?
Oh, it was very rare. I mean, and that's where loyalty set in. The love of the school, love of the coaching staff, and it was just, you played with great passion. Today, it's about the student athlete. It's about the individual. And it's a challenge for the coaches there to keep the kids for very long, and then to build a program from the ground up, from freshman, build up the student athlete until, they're a solid junior, senior with the experience to bring success to the program. You just don't see that anymore.
So Mac Brown got out of coaching and now has dived back into it and is having quite a bit of success. What does he think of this whole thing? Because he's an old school guy. I mean, he remembers the days that you're referring to, but now he's in the middle of the Wild West with this. I mean, he would be an interesting conversation to have about the conversion that he's seen happen.
Yeah, and I think any of those coaches of that era all have different opinions associated with it. But to me, it's the ones that resist the change. Those are the ones in the programs that'll suffer the most. Mac's always been very open, very receptive, very progressive. And he's surrounded himself with extremely talented coaches. And that's really why he's had such super success in his career.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he hasn't stumbled anywhere. I mean, it's a tough gig when you're at Texas. I mean, you can win a national championship, but people are going to get sick of you pretty quick. I mean, I think Aranda at Baylor, won the Big 12 2 years ago, and now, people are knocking on his door too. I mean, coaching in Texas is just a different animal.
Well, high school athletics in Texas is a different animal, man. So it's just, like I said, football has changed so much over the years, and it's exploded within the last 3-4 years with the NIL and the portal.
Yeah, the money side of it is just, I don't know if you have ESPN Plus. I'm assuming you do, but I mean, the kid that coached Farley Dickinson last year in the NCAA tournament is from Iowa. He went to North I-35 High School, and I remember him when I was coaching high school basketball at Winterset. And so I turned on ESPN Plus, and I got to watch the Iona game Friday night, which is really cool. But that's probably what's driving it. They want as many eyeballs on every screen as they possibly can, and I don't know. I just don't know where it ends. I mean,
well, here's a funny thing. Here's a historical perspective. When I was at Iowa State, one of the coaches says, "Hey, put your uniform on. We're going down to Des Moines. I got to get a picture taken." And I go, "Okay." So this is all approved and everything. Yep, no problem. So we go down to Anderson Erickson in front of the cow, hand me a glass of milk, and take a picture of me holding a glass of milk in front of the cow. Next thing I know, I get a letter from the NCAA.
Oh no!
Potential suspension, and then sanctions against the university, and so they had to fight through that whole thing. And I didn't get anything for it. I got nothing. It was just an advertisement that they were going to do inside the program, the football program. That was it. And so you can see how much things have changed over the years.
Well, I think Anderson Erickson is a huge booster of Iowa State too, if I remember right.
Yep.
I mean, so that makes sense. But
Yeah.
Heck, what do you think you would have gotten paid today to do that?
Maybe I might have gotten a carton of milk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one
Hard
of
to
the
say, but
one of the yellow cartons with the little things where they used to have a high school lunch.
yeah, absolutely. Hey, as long as my picture was never on a milk carton, I always felt it was a
Yeah,
good
no
day.
kidding. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Yeah, so you threw for about 1,500 yards, I believe, in your senior season at Iowa State, and you had some guys that I remember. One of the best Iowa State names ever, Seamus McDonough, was on your team.
Yeah.
Was Crutchfield on that team, I believe, as well?
Yes.
Okay, so the guys that you played with? Who had probably the longest NFL career? Or did anybody stay in the league for very long?
Yeah, I mean, Reimers played when I was
Oh
there.
yeah, sure.
Carl Nelson.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Dan Johnson played for 10 years with the Dolphins. So we had a lot of great athletes there at that time. It was just a lot of fun, and it was great team chemistry. It really was. And we had success too.
So do you remember the day that Earl Bruce said he was going to Ohio State?
Oh yeah, I do. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if you put that in today's world, how many of those guys would have stuck around for the transition? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's, nowadays, anytime a coach leaves, it's like the doors are wide open and everybody's calling and trying to get money for this and that. I mean, I think the thing that probably, when I was talking to Brian, that opened my eyes the most is that he was talking about how many guys he knew, because he referred to some of the same names as you did, and saying how many of those guys had jobs in the offseason while they're playing in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, and that was back when they made good money, but they didn't make today's money. And instant millionaires when you sign a contract off your rookie season or rookie contract, it's just not the same. You can't even compare it, apples and oranges. And I look at some of the former football players at Iowa State that had lengthy careers. Marv Croker, I've talked to him. What a great guy. That guy looks like he can still play football.
Really?
And I asked him, how much money did you make? And he goes, I made good money. I made good money. I still had a job during the off season, but enough I could live off of and raise a family. And I'm like, wow, one contract today you can almost live off of, but
Right.
Apples and oranges, can't compare it.
Well, it's like everybody's complaining about what Brock Purdy's making because he's making so little, but he's still making $900,000. I mean, and we've said this, Thomas, my son and I, who is the guy that runs this podcast, we've said 100 times, we just want Brock to be healthy to the point where he can get that big contract. You know what I mean? Because I don't know how you feel about it, but every time we watch Brock Purdy, we feel like we're watching one of our relatives. Right, everybody's just cheering for him because he's such a good guy. He's such a good ambassador for Iowa State, and the whole dynamic with Kittle and everything. So I just hope he can get to the finish line and get that one big payday.
Well, I mean, that injury that he suffered for his elbow, he's overcome that, throwing the ball well. He's always been very elusive, mobile, and so hopefully he won't take a direct hit, anything that's going to cause him any type of serious injury. But yeah, he did capture the hearts and soul of Cyclone Nation, and it is fun to watch him play. I love his intensity, I love his focus, and he's just, nothing phases him, and he doesn't play like it's his second year.
Did you see the video of him combining corn?
Yeah, I did.
What a very Iowa thing to do.
Oh, I know. You couldn't ask for a better script, and an advertisement for Iowa State, just to see that. And, that down home feeling and everything.
Yeah, he was we were at the Kansas game, and he came out, and he was there and waved to the crowd, and the place just went absolutely bananas. Yeah. I mean, it's still Mac still gets the same reaction too. Anytime he was there, anytime he shows up. I mean, the one thing you got to say about the Iowa State fans is they're pretty loyal. I mean, I can't even think of somebody that would walk out there and would not get a good reception, regardless of who they are.
No, they're just very appreciative. They understand that, those people that come in, they dedicate and commit themselves to not only to the program itself, but to the university and the fan base. They're just so appreciative. And it's not just a a fly by night type of thing. You're part of the family when you're done, and I've always been very appreciative of it, because my experience at Iowa State propelled me to success, in life, and my professional life for law enforcement. 40 years there, but I will say this, it comes with dedication, it comes with commitment, and great passion. And so those are the things that most of the highly successful athletes have. And so with that, I always tell my wife, you know what? I had great success at Iowa State. And I said, I have great success in law enforcement. And, I'm just blessed. I really am. And I feel very fortunate as to where I am today in life.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to touch on your career post Iowa State too. But
Yeah.
do you ever remember, before we leave the football side of things, do you ever remember a time in Iowa State football history we had so many skilled players playing in the NFL?
Right.
I mean, we put Reimers and some of those guys in, but now we got Xavier Hutchinson, getting reversed. They've run a reverse for him several times for the Texans this year. It's just amazing to see it's like it's almost an advertisement to come to Iowa State and get developed, and you can get to the NFL from Ames, Iowa.
Yeah, you can. And to get to the NFL, you can go through, like you say, Iowa State, and we've proven that. And I'll tell you, one of the better hires that we've had, and he ranks up there at the top for me, Matt Campbell. I'll tell you, I've really gotten to know him, spent time with him, and appreciate who and what he is and his foundation that he has underneath his feet. He has a great perspective on life. We all lose focus sometimes associated with the amount of time we spend with our family, but that's part of the job. And he just cares deeply about the players. And that's what I love. And he puts their safety, their welfare, their education above what happens on that football field. And that's hard for a lot of coaches to do, but he does it. And he's surrounded himself with extremely talented coaches. And he has been a godsend for, Iowa State. He really has. He's brought credibility back to the program, because we hit a lull there where it kind of was a revolving door there of coaches, and he's brought stability to it.
Yeah, and I agree 1,000% with everything you said. I mean, I thought that before what I'm about to say, but I also tried to find out some of the books that he's been reading. He has a book with the kids, and so I've read a couple of the books that he assigns to the players. That really reinforces everything you just said. I mean, what he's trying to teach the kids, based on some of that, really shows you, the life lessons that he's trying to instill. And in the line he keeps using is 18 to 22-year-olds. He says that on every one of his press conferences. And so, he understands, his role, I think, as the adult in the room. I mean,
well, he's not the adult. He is really, to me, the fixture, the glue that keeps that program together. I mean, he's the one that provides the leadership, the mentoring, the coaching, so that these kids can grow and mature. And, he lives up to a standard of excellence, and he holds himself to it, and he holds his players to it, which is really a key. One of the things that he's done at the university is establish the mentoring program. I was fortunate enough to be a part of that for several years. And it's a good way to actually meet the players, but more than that, to help them, guide them, and then look at them and say, hey, here's some of the things that I experienced. I just want to share them with you so that, maybe you can take those golden nuggets and then utilize those to build your foundation for the future. And it's really fun to see and get to know the kids on a personal level. And they're not kids, young men, because as you tell them, your football career could end in a heartbeat, or, you could have an extended career, 4 years, 5 years at Iowa State, maybe even 6 with the COVID years. And then afterwards, that's when you have to prepare yourself for the future. And Matt accepts that, he recognizes it, and then he actually thrusts the student athlete and then tries to prepare him for post Iowa State University.
So do you keep in contact with these young men after they leave the program, the ones you've mentored? Or
yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, you do. And that's the fun part about it. They'll send you texts when they come back for games. When something special happens in their life, they'll send you a text. It's a lot of fun. And it's great networking for them, because, what they're trying to do is match up the student athlete with the type of educational emphasis that they have, and then
Sure.
also what their career development is. So there's a lot of them that were in criminal justice that I had the opportunity to go ahead and get involved with, and then
Very good. Wow.
provide assistance, mentoring to them. Yeah.
So, if I remember right, we had a running back that was in criminal justice. His name escapes me. He sat next to my son at the Michigan basketball game, and they rushed the court together. He was a kid from Texas. My son's going to kill me that I can't remember his name. Doesn't matter. But so leading into that, you referred to law enforcement a couple of times. Tell us about your journey post Iowa State. I mean, I know you stayed in Iowa. You were about 30 miles south of Ames after you left, and just give us a little snippet of where life took you after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I graduated from Dowling High School, went to Iowa State, graduated with an accounting degree, and then had all the intentions in the world to be an FBI agent, that's what my dad was.
Wow.
So it is. So it's kind of a family, connection there that we have. And so, my dad was in the FBI, and he was I'll tell you what, I've been blessed with great mentors in my life, people that have a positive influence on me, taught me right from wrong, and then taught me a great work ethic in life. And so graduated from Iowa State, tried out with the Denver Broncos, and they were starting out with the UFSL. And so with that, they're like, hey, we're sending you to Chicago. Going to be, after I got done with the Broncos, you're going to be part of the Chicago Fire. And
I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be part of the new type of football. And he was I developed a good relationship with him. He's a Notre Dame quarterback. He was trying out with the Broncos at the same time I was. They had selected Tim and I to be the quarterbacks at their UFSL football team, and it was the Chicago Fire. And so Tim said he was going to go. He was going to play for a year, save up some money, and then go to law school afterwards. And so I just told him, hey, I'm not going there. I'm just going to go back to Des Moines area and start my law enforcement career, my professional career. And got done with football, came back, and then was a auditor at Bankers Trust. John Ruan was a huge supporter of Iowa State. In fact, when I got hired there, he called me up to his office, and we're sitting on the top floor of the Ruan building. And he's like, I can't tell you how proud I am of you and how glad I am to have you as an employee. And I'm like, oh, thank you, sir. And he goes, look at this picture. What is that? And I go, well, it's your private, aircraft, sir. And he's like, what color is it? I go, cardinal and gold. Exactly right. It always will be. And that's why you're here. And I want you to stay here. And so I didn't tell him. I go, I have my application in for the FBI, and then also for ultimately the Division of Criminal Investigation at the time. And so there was a freeze on hiring for the FBI, and the the DCI, Division of Criminal Investigation, actually made an offer, invited me to go through the hiring process and then start my career.
So then you ended up at Waukee, right? I mean, so I guess I maybe have lost a step here. I mean,
yeah, you did. So you're at the end of my career. So I spent 31 years with the Division of Criminal Investigation.
Okay, so I mean, I remember you at with the Waukee police force, but that's the part that I remember, I guess.
Yeah, and in 2014 retired from the DCI, was director of the division, and it was a great honor. It was so exciting. I loved my time at the state with the Division of Criminal Investigation. And then after that, retired. My wife sat me down and she goes, so you're going to retire? And I go, yeah, I am, honey. I'm going to spend every moment with you when I retire. And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, that's not going to happen. She goes, you're a type A personality. You need to have a job. And go find one. And she goes, and find a high paying job because I like our lifestyle. So fortunately, Larry Phillips was out at Waukee. He'd been there 34 years, was retiring. And then we had a good friendship. And then he asked me to apply. I did some research and thought it was a great fit. So spent a little over 9 years there as chief of police at Waukee.
Okay. Yeah. So Waukee, you've seen a lot of changes in that town.
Yeah, we
I
did.
mean, it's
We
still
did.
changing, but I was the head basketball coach at Winterset High School and I was a teacher there. And Waukee was in our league when Brian and I lived next door to each other. And
Yep.
now Waukee's got 2 flipping high schools. I mean, it's just gone absolutely bananas.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Great, economic development there and commercial also along with it. But the funny part is, I think the football coach for uh, Waukee High School, the Waukee High School, not Northwest, but he was the only, I think, coach to go 1A, 2A, 3A, and
Wow.
4A during his tenure there as coach.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
insane.
that's how fast that city has grown. It really has. They're very visionary, very bold in their decision making, and it's just a good community to be involved with.
Yeah, and it's just amazing, when you drive down some of the county roads in that area. I mean, used to be cornfields not that long ago. I mean, I remember when they built Jordan Creek, I kept thinking, how is this place going to handle West Merle Hay in this place? And now Jordan Creek's still flourishing too. I mean, even in the times that commercial real estate's not doing very good. So
Yeah, I know Alice's road out there. It's paved now. I remember when it was a gravel road, and
oh yeah,
Alice's Spaghetti Land. I don't know if did you ever eat out there?
no.
Oh my God, it was just they didn't have 2 dishes that were the same, and it was the best pasta you've ever had.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, just
Wow.
absolutely is super and a lot of fun, a lot of history there.
So, do you remember the Justin Martin? Were you still
Yeah.
working when that happened? Because his father was a friend of mine. I remember when, actually, when they got Justin because he was the same age as my older son, and to be honest with you, when that happened, that was the day that I really appreciated what you guys do for a living. I mean, because had just had a conversation a few weeks before with his dad, talking about him going to the real world, and then, this tragedy happens in Urbandale, Iowa, which nobody would think something like that happened, but it just made me appreciate, police force and any law enforcement much more than I probably did prior to that, because it's a horrible story. But I figured that you were still around Waukee when that happened too.
Yeah, I was over there in Waukee, and knew the chief at the Urbandale Police Department. It was just devastating. It really was for the profession, but mainly for all of law enforcement in the state of Iowa.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's happening too much. I mean,
it is.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and and there was a sergeant from Des Moines PD that also perished that night. And for those people that aren't familiar with what we're talking about, Justin Martin was an officer with the Urbandale Police Department. He came up to an intersection by just south and east of Urbandale High School. As he stopped there, an individual walked up to him with an AR-15 and then just unloaded on him. And so it was just an execution of an officer. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And shortly thereafter, then killed a sergeant from Des Moines PD. So,
his Justin's dad's a high school he just retired last year. He was a high school principal for a long time, and I just saw what it did to that community and that family. It was just tragic. But like I said, it made me appreciate. Most people don't. When their wives watch them walk out the door, don't wonder if they're going to come back. That afternoon, and that's what you guys dealt with on a daily basis. I mean,
yeah, it was. The one thing I will say is that they're very few, they're very infrequent, but the thing I love about Iowa is their support of law enforcement. They have great passion, great support. They care, they love, they pray for us, and it was always an honor and a privilege to be a public servant in that area, because you knew that you see people on their worst day and you're there to help them, pick them up. And when we went to our worst day, when Justin Martin perished, it was the community that actually picked up law enforcement and made us feel appreciated, respected, and knowing that people love and care about you. So I'll tell you that the career of law enforcement is extremely challenging, but there is nothing more rewarding than the career that you can have. My law enforcement career was just an extension of my athletic career at Iowa State. It was unbelievable. It was so rewarding, so much fun, but challenging. I can tell you so many different stories.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's a different podcast.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, last question I want to ask you is that I've asked this. I've run basketball camps and I've had Iowa State athletes come in, and I've asked this question before. If you went through your contacts in your cell phone, who's the most famous person in your phone that is a direct connection to your athletic career?
You know what? I still have Mac Brown's number
Okay.
with me, and there's so many different people that played an important part in just the growth and development of individuals. And mine, Earl Bruce, getting up there. There was a guy, my offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, Tom Lichtenberg, who's perished. He's passed. And then I look at Mac Brown, and I look at all the other great coaches that I've had a part of. But to be honest with you, it was my dad that had the greatest influence on my development from a personality standpoint. He literally taught me right and wrong. But the one thing that he taught me was that there is nothing given to you. You have to work, and then you have to work even harder if you want to find success, true success in life. And that's what his foundation for his life was. And he was a great dad. He was a great father, and he was just someone that I looked up to, respected very much. So I've been blessed in my life with those people that have touched my life and guided me in my path, my journey, and was able to, I'm lucky, found great success in everything. So
most people, when they reach retirement, would give about anything to be able to say what you just said, when they get to the tail end of their professional career. I mean, I think that was very well said. I mean,
well, I appreciate that very much. Yeah. Craig, how's
we
things
appreciate
going for you?
Well, I mean, I also ran across the name when I was looking
Okay.
at rosters, getting ready for this. Greg Lemke was a backup quarterback on Iowa State. I've run into him in bomb guards in Humboldt before.
Oh my God. Greg
I've-
is the best. I love Greg. I mean, yeah.
He still never has a bad day, I don't think.
Oh my God, no. I'll tell you what, sometime we'll go offline. I want to tell you a story about Greg. You'll just laugh so hard. But
Well,
Greg is
I was actually at a New Year's Eve party with Greg several years ago, and that was really the first time we talked. And he made me take a selfie with him. We sent it to Brian Neal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'll tell you what, that Brian Neal is an unbelievable individual. I mean, he's got the sharpest wit and the sharpest tongue with some of the comments he makes. But the one thing about Brian is that he is a true friend. I mean,
yeah, he is.
He loves and cares, about people, and he is just a people person. And so anybody that has a friend like Brian Neal is very fortunate in life to have somebody of that quality.
Well, and he's parlayed that into a successful business too. I mean, that's really the way he handles his business too. He treats people the right way, and that's where him and his sons have built the Neal Insurance brand in Des Moines too. So
yeah, there's been nothing given to Brian or his family. I mean, I knew Carl and his mom, and they didn't have much growing up.
Yeah,
and I can remember they used to keep a lock on the refrigerator because all the boys would eat all the food.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, I've seen his brothers before. Yeah,
and but just a great family. And Brian's he represents all that's good about Iowa State athletics, and also about being a good individual.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, John. It was a pleasure to meet you. I'm always, I feel like I'm interviewing these guys that I probably have a poster of you somewhere in a tub because I kept all my Athlon stuff from back then. And I've got programs my parents had season tickets in the Armory for basketball, and then till 1995. So I grew up going to Iowa State basketball games, and like I said, we're not making anything of this. This is just a passion project of my son and I, and it's just a lot of fun to talk to some of you guys and reminisce about your side of the ball versus my side, just listening to a game in a tractor somewhere. So
yeah,
it's been a lot
absolutely.
of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to go ahead and speak to you and also everybody else. So
yeah, well, maybe we'll do it again sometime, but we got a big one this weekend. Hopefully we can pull it off against Texas.
We can. I mean, the opportunity's there, and that's what Matt always talks about. Hey, this is just another opportunity, and you never know who's going to step up to the plate, make the big play. But the one thing about it is we're going to be competitive. And I look forward to the opportunity to see what the outcome is. It should be fun.
It'll be on the big stage too. So the primetime game on Fox. So, and we may even post this after the game. I'm not even sure, but I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun.
You going up to the game?
You know what? I have to be in I have to leave for Cedar Rapids tomorrow to go with. It's a long story, but with my wife to go visit one of her friends, and then we're coming back Saturday. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get back here and then back to Ames.
Okay.
Right. So it's going to be a game time decision, as they say. So well, thanks a lot, John. I really appreciate it.
You bet, Craig. Good to talk
Have a good
to you.
night.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.